Hello, everyone. This is Ben Dunn, founder of Antarctic Press, a small publishing comic book company founded in 1985, creator of such comics as Ninja High School, Warrior Nun, Marvel Mangaverse, Tomorrow Girl, Mighty Tiny, and a host of other comic book creations. I listen to a lot of channels talking about comics, and one particular one I heard mentioned why manga is so successful now. Yeah, it's no secret. I mean, it's just like manga is pretty much taking over half of the comic book industry right now, and then right now people are trying to use it as an example of how healthy the comic industry is. Well, that may be true. Maybe manga is propping up the comic industry. That's not such a bad thing, now, is it? The problem is that shouldn't be the case. I mean, I'll tell you a little story. I mean, manga was not always popular. It was considered very niche, very foreign, very weird. The common thing I would always get was like, why do they have such big eyes? Why do they use so many speed lines? It was a long road that manga had to hewn to be accepted today. Back in the late 70s, mid 70s, I discovered manga when I went to a trip overseas in Taiwan, and I found a plethora of manga bootlegged from Japan. I mean, some of it may be legitimate. I don't know. My impression was due to the poor quality of the printing and the way and how cheap it was. I cannot imagine that the manga that was in Taiwan were very legitimate. But this was the 70s, and it was not. It was very easy to get away with such things like that because copyrights were not as enforced as they are now, and I'm sure even in Japan they wasn't that big a deal outside of their own market. So when I brought manga to the States when I returned home, I fell in love with the art form. It was fantastic, but there was no manga. The manga I brought from Japan was all I had. There's nothing new in the States as far as I could do. So I vowed that I would do manga in the United States. So I formed Antarctic Press in 1985. And the very first comic we did was a comic called Mangazine. It was a play on the word magazine, but I put in the word manga in it. Oh, well, retailers had no idea what the heck what a mangazine was or even what manga was. For the most part, most comic book retailers, didn't carry manga, weren't aware of it. Oh, they probably knew there were some people out there that would buy it on occasion. We would come in and talk about something called anime, which was short for Japanese animation, but for the most part, manga was not not a thing, But then a company called Eclipse Comics came along and started putting out authentic manga. Now, for a while, Antarctic Press sort of cornered the market on manga because we were doing American style manga, basically. I mean, there were other comics out there too that were trying to introduce American style comics. Quite a few made attempts at it. I did a comic called Tiger X in Mangazine, which was sort of a anime mecha style comic, and I must have done a pretty good job on it because I kept getting offers from other publishers to draw their giant robot series. Because manga was making headway. Like I said, Eclipse was trying to Viz at that time, or at least the arm of, I guess, the publisher Shogakukan. I'm not sure. I'm not quite up on my details, but I think Viz was created so that they could bring manga to the United States, and they use Eclipse to piggyback. Sort of like, what Image did with the creators is that, what they used Malibu Comics to piggyback Image on there to try it out. Use another company to test the market, so to speak, and it proved to be a modest hit. There was definitely a demand for manga. It did, and then I went back to Japan in the 1990s. I went to Japan in the 1990s. It was my first trip there. I had some friends there, and we went to a thing called Comic Market, or Comiquette, as they euphemistically called it, which is basically a big, huge gathering of manga creators who create these little circles, or individual creators and they sell their manga out there, and it's huge. It's vast. You think San Diego has a lot of people? No, Comiquette blows that out of the water. They have these things called circles in Comiquette, where groups of people get together to do their own comics based on subject matter that they all like to do. Here it's more individualistic thing. We try to do our own fanzines by ourselves, but there they gather a group of like-minded individuals, and they create a thing called doujinshis, which are basically fanzines, and they do comics based on their favorite subject matter. That is where I discovered some new up-and-coming talent, and we brought some manga over to the United States. Yeah, because we talked to smaller publishers. We brought some of their material over because there was no way we were going to be able to compete with the larger, public publishers. It'd be like somebody, overseas going to Marvel and DC. You have to have a lot of Marvel. You have to have a lot of clout and money, in order to license things from them. I mean, I'm sure it was different back then, but it is now different. But so the foundations for manga was being set by pioneers early in the comic industry, or early in the direct market, to get an acceptance of manga in the United States. Because the United States is, for all intentional purposes, the biggest market in the world. You can make something succeed in the United States, and it'll succeed everywhere. And that's the thing about it, is that they didn't give up. They kept putting out manga. Now, like I said, manga was always just sort of a niche thing. It did not take off. As it was not as popular as American superhero comics. American superhero comics still dominated, the market, and that's that's a fact, because Image was Image was popular, Valiant was popular. I mean, American superhero comics were very, very, very dominant. So what changed? When did manga overtake American comics? It's I don't know if there's a precise point when that happened, but it must have been within the last 5 or 6 years, or maybe 10 years ago. That's when the foundation started to break. When I would almost say that when the election of Barack Obama probably signaled the downfall of American comic books. What do you mean? Ben, what do you mean by that? Well, what I mean is that, the comic books started becoming political. They started to change direction as to what kind of stories they were going to do. They were less about doing stories than about pushing an agenda, trying to push a message. And that, that is fundamentally, antithetical to what an entertainment product is supposed to do, And that's, I think, when manga started to creep in. That's because manga doesn't have that problem. The thing about manga is that it's usually the product of a single individual. It's a vision of some, creator who wanted to tell a story. And in Japan, there's no direct market. There's no direct to sell to the consumer. It's still a traditional newsstand model. You have big publishers who put out comics, and they if they're unsold, they pulp them. They take them back and pulp them. And they put out a new comic. Now, they put out a comic every week, and because of that, comic readers have to simplify their line work, simplify their storytelling, in order to meet that deadline. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, in every single manga, but for the most part, it is. And guess what? The readers vote on the popularity of a manga. They don't simply go by sales figures. Most manga in Japan are in anthology format. There's not a singular one, manga that just carries one story. No, we're used to that here. We get the collections, which is usually weeks and weeks and weeks and months of manga that have been created. Most of the manga you're reading now are months, years old. They're already on new manga over there. Except for the long running ones, we're still putting out, serialized versions of the story. You're very rarely going to get the up to date brand new manga that's just coming out trying to find its audience. You'll probably get that months or weeks there after, it's been voted on by the readers of the manga, of the anthology. That's how they determine, what's popular. Because they can't do it on sales, because the sales are the same, for the entire, anthology. You can't judge whether something's popular because there's multiple stories. You have to judge it based on what the readers think, and they take the time to tell the publisher, this is what we like. This is how, this is what we want more of. And here we don't do that. We base it on sales, totally on sales, because each comic is an individual story. We don't mix and match characters, unless we have titles. Basically, we have titles, and the titles, the publisher of those titles determine whether or not they're successful based simply on sales. And that's the measure that of success here in the United States. And right now, manga is currently overtaking American comics as far as sales are concerned. They're making, they're making more money than American comics are. That's a simple fact. But why is that? Why are they making more money? Is it because it's because I think the subject matter, if you're not interested in American superheroes, not a lot of people are, what else is there? What are the mainstream comic book companies doing to broaden their reader base? A lot of people are complaining about politics, agendas, whatever the latest thing is they're trying to vie for. You can do that, sure. If you want to do a comic book to attract a certain audience, yeah, more power to you. But you're leaving a lot of money on the table by not creating comics for a broader readership. Or Anarchic Press, one of the things I think is been a key to Anarchic Press's success is that we don't cater to the mainstream audience. We learned very quickly that to do so is suicidal. Marvel and DC have been doing this for decades, literally decades. They know how to do superhero comics, or at least they should be. They should. So there's no way that any company can overtake them. They have the legacy. They have the characters. I mean, I don't know how long that'll last, because right now they seem to be shooting themselves in the foot, but they can at any time change direction and win people back if they choose to do so. I mean, even Image at its height could not overtake Marvel and DC. And that's just a simple fact. Will manga take over? Well, I contend that they're two different markets. The people who buy manga, are buying it because of the subject matter, maybe because of value. I'm not sure. I don't think that a $10 manga with, 150, 200 pages, is any better a deal than, the average floppy because, first of all, most of that work is completed months ago. While here in the United States, we're creating all new material on a regular basis, and that takes a lot more effort and time. And also most American comics are now in color, and manga is not. So it keeps the cost down. Anyone can tell you printing in black and white is going to be way cheaper than printing in color. Now, that doesn't suddenly make a difference to a lot of the audience. So basically, the subject matter has to be what's attracting people to manga, because there is a manga for every single taste, every single type of audience. You'll find a manga. And that's why in our personal we don't try to compete head to head with Marvel and DC, because that's a suicide. That's suicide. So we pivot to offer other things. Like we do, science fiction stories. We do steampunk stories. We've actually done LGBTQ stories. We've done, but we don't make it that singular thing. We're even doing a jungle comics. When was the last time anyone's done a regular jungle themed comic book? I mean, it doesn't sell great, but it does well enough to keep it going. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build an audience that way. We know there's enough of an audience out there that, that can keep us in business by doing other things other than superhero comics. So will manga last? I don't know. Maybe. If as long as they're coming out with material that people are interested in, I don't see any reason why manga would go away. And it's become part of the lexicon now. People know what manga is. 30, 40 years ago, people would look at me funny if I said, if I said the word manga. No one would understand what that meant. What is that? And now anime, manga, all part of the pop culture lexicon. In fact, it's creeped into mainstream. People know what a manga is now. And then they go to the comic store. There's a manga section. Big old huge sign says manga. So what it means and precisely what it is. So this is the challenge I have for American comics, is that we need to create content to bring people back. I think it would be very easy. Well, I take that back. It's not going to be very easy, but it is possible to win back, a new audience by offering things that manga can't offer. One of the things is that the best way to win over a new audience is to create something that the other competition is not doing. That yet you can do better. It's one of those things where, find a niche or market that's not being served and serve that market. It may be small, but at least you can rely on it to keep you up. I mean, we just recently reintroduced Furlough. There's not very many furry comics out there anymore, but we think there's a demand for it. We think that if we serve that market well, then they will be continually loyal to us, and as long as we put out good product, they'll continue to buy it. So I mean, I think in retrospect, since Marvel and DC are now owned by huge entertainment conglomerates, corporations, that they somehow don't, and I don't know this for a fact, and somehow they don't seem any worry to change or pivot, because they perceive making enough to justify their existence. So it'll see in the long term how things go. My my advice to comic retailers is to diversify your product line. Don't rely on one thing. Don't rely on just Marvel and DC to, prop up your store. I think I've heard a lot of comic book stores are now just not carrying new product. I think that's a mistake. You want new product constantly so that you can get people in your store on a regular basis. That at least that's my opinion. So whether or not you like what I've said, that's fine. You are more than welcome to have your own opinion. If you like what you've heard, please like and subscribe at the below. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It doesn't cost you anything. You keep up to date on what's coming out as far as my rather, my personal opinions on things. I do have 2 campaigns going. One is called Tomorrow Girl. It's exclusively on Indiegogo. It's volume 3. It's a nice all-ages throwback to the silver age of comic book heroes. Another one's exclusively on Kickstarter, which is Mighty Tiny, which is a anthropomorphic steampunk story about all ages. It's got a lot of fun and adventures, and I'm hoping you'll check it out. The link will be below. So until next time, this is Ben Dunn signing off.
She's got long hair and a hero cape on. She's the kind of girl who fights till dawn. She's a superhero, she'll save the day. One can mess with her, no one can sway. In the city of Quagmire, she's the talk of the town. Whenever there's trouble, she's always around. With her super strength and lightning speed, she fights for justice, for fear.